Just tell me a little bit about your efforts to take the Court of Appeals on the road.
So it previously had been fairly rare for the Court of Appeals to sit anywhere other than in Albany. There had been, there was a time in the late 1800s where the court sat in Buffalo and then sat again, I think, in 1903 in Buffalo. And occasionally when there's been a particular thing to memorialize, for example, it was the, I think, 350th anniversary of the courthouse in Johnstown, New York. We sat there for a day in commemoration of that. But when I became chief, I really thought this is a court for the whole state. And so it's a good idea to one week a year, take us somewhere else in the state where we can become accessible to the people there. We can meet with the local bar associations, can meet with the local judges. And one of the greatest things is having all these students, high school, middle school students, come in and be able to watch the arguments in person. And then we stay afterwards. We stay for half an hour, 40 minutes, and tell them a little about who we are, but mostly let them ask us questions. And one of the things, if you'd seen the sessions with the students yesterday or seen the students with the sessions today, a lot of them wanted to know how we became lawyers and then judges. And it turns out no one on the court right now, none of the 7 judges had any lawyers in the family, had any judges in the family. Many of us hadn't met a lawyer or a judge until we were in law school. And I think that's a neat thing for these, middle school and high school students to hear, that there's a sort of world of possibility for them that they're not constrained about. Another big reason that I wanted to bring the court different places is that the civics education in the United States has really fallen precipitously from what it was 40, 50 years ago. And there are varieties of people on all ends of the political spectrum who fault the inability of people with different views to be able to talk to each other and reach a consensus on that lack of civic understanding. And so one of my big efforts has been we've created a civics coordination position for the court system. We have judges and court employees going to various schools and other kinds of events to work with young people to try and fill some of the gap. And I think bringing the court to different places in a little way helps fill that gap as well.
I think also I would assume that it's instructive to folks to see how the court operates, certainly on your level, in what little I witnessed, and this didn't in any way surprise me, but I mean, you guys look to kind of hold both sides' feet to the fire. You're challenging both sides.
We do. We're, I think, very even-handed. It also helps that we come from different places and had different prior experience, so even the way we approach things initially ourselves is not, monolithic. It's really quite varied. And we each, know things in areas of law that are stronger in some areas of law than others, so that kind of helps. But it's interesting. The function of a trial court is to sort of decide the case that's in front of it. And the function of the intermediate appellate court is to make sure that that was done properly. And we have those functions as well in a much smaller way. Our much bigger function is to determine what the law of the state is. We're much less deciding that individual case than we're setting out a rule that's going to apply in the future. That's why we can't refine facts. We're stuck with the facts that the other courts below us have found. But our paramount responsibility is to determine the law of the state. And so for that's why you hear us asking both sides lots of questions and lots of hypothetical questions, because what we're testing is, well, if this was the rule, but the facts changed to this, is that still going to work? It's very much like if you were creating an automobile or you're creating an airplane. You want to test all the pieces to make sure they work together and in all the different circumstances that thing has got to operate. So that's when we're asking all these questions, that's really what we're doing.
I assume, as the top court in our state, you're the ultimate arbiter of what is constitutional based on our state constitution.
We are.
And how much do people, do you think, really understand that distinction? And to what degree does our state constitution differ from the U.S. Constitution?
So that's a really good and intricate question that could take a long time to answer. But New York has had a constitution before the United States existed, and there are parts of the New York Constitution that are copied from the U.S. Constitution at a later point, because we've had a series of amendments to the Constitution, constitutional conventions, and so on. But there are other parts that are original or that are quite different. The New York Constitution is much longer than the federal Constitution. It can be amended much more easily and has been amended. I think it's been amended more than 250 times, so more than 10 times as frequently as the U.S. Constitution has been amended, not even counting for the fact that the first 10 of those amendments happened right away for the U.S. Constitution. But people generally, I think, don't appreciate that there is a New York Constitution that is different, and even lawyers frequently, if they are arguing that something, let's say, is prohibited by both the federal and the New York State Constitution, they really just kind of pay lip service to the New York Constitution. They don't try to tease out why it might be different or why it might provide something independent. And many times there would be an argument there that people have sort of neglected. It will be interesting to see, because I think there have been two fairly consequential recent amendments to the Constitution, one that sort of provides a constitutional right in New York to clean air and clean water, and another that was colloquially called the Equal Rights Amendment that passed very recently. That cases for those have not wound up at my court yet. They will someday, and those are clear areas where there's nothing like that in the U.S. Constitution. And then how are we going to interpret that?
So getting back to the road show, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
is so you became chief judge in 2023.
Yep.
Is this now the second year you've gone on the road?
That is correct.
Where
yes.
did you go last year?
So we went to Buffalo last year. Went to Buffalo. It was the third time the court sat in Buffalo, and as I mentioned, the last time was more than 100 years ago. One of the gating factors in where we can go is there a courtroom that has a bench that can accommodate 7 judges? And you'll see even the beautiful courtroom here in Binghamton is really made for 5, but if you look closely, the court system built 2 extensions on the end. They match pretty well, and so all 7 of us can sit there. But there are plenty of beautiful old courthouses around the state that don't have a bench that's nearly big enough to accommodate us. And so part of the trick is to find, a courthouse that will accommodate us. We don't come with our full staff. We come, with a skeleton staff, a couple of people from the clerk's office, a reduced number of our own law clerks, and a reduced number of support people. But we still have to find a workspace somewhere, and if the courthouse can't accommodate it, then we need to find somewhere else that we can work, because we're working pretty long hours.
So how has the experience of coming to Binghamton been?
Binghamton has been wonderful. It's sort of, both last year when we went to Buffalo and this year when we're coming here, some of my colleagues said, oh, gee, why are we going to Buffalo in November? Or, why are we going to Binghamton in March? It was sort of weather related. Why did we go when the weather was going to be better? But in both cases, we've brought the best weather with us. I have to say in both places, Binghamton and Buffalo, people have been so welcoming. They've been so happy that we're here. They've been so helpful. It really, even if you put aside the whole reasons that we came here to try and make ourselves available and to boost the understanding of the courts and the Court of Appeals and to have that interaction, it's been great to come here just because people are so nice. It really has been.
And I've got to imagine, outside of even just the students, that there must be some either young folks who are studying for the bar or fairly new attorneys, that sort of thing. What kind of an opportunity is it for them to be able to see you folks in action?
So I think that was more true when we went to Buffalo because there's a law school there. And then unfortunately, we didn't realize this, and there were other factors that probably wouldn't have let us change the month that we were visiting, but SUNY Binghamton is on break right now. So, it's great that we have high school and middle school students. I think college students would have benefited in somewhat a different way from the middle school students. And if there was a law school somewhere relatively near here, I think that would have been a great opportunity. And we could see that in Buffalo. There were a lot of law students who came. There is a Bar Association event this evening, and if there were a law student around here, I'm sure they'd be welcome to come to that. But that's just a function of where we are.
All right, well, at this point, I think I'm good, unless there's something else about your visit you'd like to comment on?
No, I think we've had a great, this has been very rewarding, I think, for all of us on the court. And every time we go somewhere and we have an experience like this, it just makes us want to do it again.